How do you decide on the curriculum that's right for your family? Hi, I am Rachel from 7 in All. I am a second generation homeschooler, and in today's video, I am going to be walking you through the exact process that I use in deciding and purchasing homeschool curriculum for my family. I hope that seeing the steps in the process and the way that I walk through this process can help you in making these important decisions that help shape your homeschool year. Because none of us want to be out here wasting money on curriculum we're not going to end up using, or not buying the resources that we do in fact end up needing in the end. So let's get started. The very first step for me is to consider all the subjects that I need to teach for all my students and write down all of those different categories. I like to make my subject lists and needs lists in my planner. You could make it on just a random piece of paper. You could make it on the computer. Yeah, a lot of people like to opt for spreadsheets. And so what this looks like is taking each of your students and writing down what subjects you're going to be teaching and what subjects you are going to be incorporating in your homeschool for that year. This is your math. This is your LA, your language arts. And then within language arts, what are you going to be teaching within language arts? Are you in the phonics season of life, or have you moved beyond phonics and you're starting to teach writing and you're starting to incorporate spelling, but you're also incorporating some still reading skill building? So write down all these categories. Are you doing a foreign language this year? Are you incorporating music? Are you going to incorporate art? Write down all of those categories to begin with. Just get it all out on paper for each of your students. So you've got a second grader, maybe you've got a kindergartner, maybe in some of those categories you will end up combining them. That's fine. You can end up writing down the same resource in both categories, but get all those categories written down first so that you know exactly what you're working with. So now you've got a page filled with all those empty slots with second grade math and kindergarten math and second grade history and all of these things that you need to fill. So you look at this page full of empty slots and then you begin to work on filling them. First, I would say shop your own shelves or shop the resources that are available to you. What is in your collection already? Do you have anything in your collection that can be used effectively to fill these slots and to meet these needs? Now, if you're brand new to homeschooling, you might not have anything and you might really be starting from scratch. But for those of us who have been homeschooling for a while, odds are you can be pulling from your own collection to say, hey, this resource is going to fit this child in this category this year. This is also the time to decide whether you actually need a real curriculum to fill in each slot, or whether some of these slots you decide to meet in a different way. So for example of what I mean by this is, say writing. Say I have an early elementary student who knows how to handwrite, but of course we want them growing in writing skills, but maybe I don't feel like it's time to introduce formal writing lessons yet. What might I do? Maybe I decide I don't need any curriculum, but what I do need to have is a plan. Because if you don't have a curriculum, you for sure need a plan. I do need to have a plan that maybe we're going to do twice a week journal entries, or we'll do 2 different types of journals or notebooks this year, where we're just going to start getting practice with putting ideas, putting words and thoughts onto paper, and just in a very free and creative way. So maybe, and I write down that plan. I don't need to write down a curriculum for that. I don't need to purchase a curriculum to do that, as long as I have a plan. So that's your next stage. Start filling in the categories with either resources you already have or plans that you feel very confident and content with, that, okay, I don't need to actually go out and purchase a curriculum for this. I have a plan on how I'm going to meet this need in my homeschool this year. So now you are left with a paper that probably has some subject slots filled in, but it probably still has some subject slots that are not yet filled in. This is where you begin the research process to determine what resources you should purchase to fill in all of these needed slots that you still need to fill. And here is where I think you should always begin your research, from a point of knowing yourself as a homeschool teacher very well, as your students. Knowing yourself and what you like and don't like as a teacher, and knowing your students, is really going to help prevent you from making purchasing mistakes. Knowing yourself really, really well. What I mean by this is, be very aware of what you like and what you don't like doing on a practical, everyday level. Because just take this for example, if you don't enjoy reading aloud, you are not going to magically begin enjoying reading aloud just because you spent hundreds of dollars on a curriculum that involves a lot of reading aloud. You just don't change like that. Like, if you don't enjoy reading aloud, you're probably not going to magically change. You might be able to grow in your tolerance for reading aloud, but it's not going to be a magical switch simply because you bought this curriculum. That's the sort of thing I mean. To give some further examples, the way I know myself, I know that I don't actually like, as a teacher, the unit study approach. I know that many people love unit studies. They love theming all of their learning around a certain theme for a particular period of time and tying in their math and their language arts and everything to a certain theme. Personally, I just don't like that. I'd rather spend a longer amount of time learning about certain subjects. I like more linear learning. The unit study approach just doesn't jive with the way my brain really works. I don't thrive with it. So I know I'm not really going to seek out unit study type resources, especially for learning core subjects, because it's just not the way I prefer to teach core subjects. In addition, I know that if I'm using a curriculum and the curriculum tells me, play a card game where you're adding 8 to whatever number you draw from the deck of cards to practice your 8 facts. If the curriculum tells me to do that as part of the math lesson, I will do it. I will. I know myself. That's just how I tend to do. My son will probably love that adding 8 game. It'll be great. But I'm not the kind of person that's really going to enjoy buying random extra math games that are not incorporated into a curriculum and actually remembering to play them. I don't really like educational games at random. I'm just likely they will probably sit on the shelf getting dusty and unused. So knowing that about myself helps save me a lot of money. On the flip side, you also want to know what you do like. For me, I absolutely love reading aloud. I have loved reading aloud since I was a small child. For me, it is my stage. It is my performance. I love doing the voices and the emotions and the pauses and the drama. I love seeing the way my kids react while I read aloud. So for me, choosing a curriculum that involves a lot of reading aloud is probably going to be a big win because it's something I really enjoy doing, and I see my kids thriving with spending that time together and with learning while I'm reading aloud as well. I also really appreciate curriculum that does not involve a lot of planning, a lot of setup, a lot of manipulatives and extra supplies. I lean a little bit minimalist. I don't tend to have a ton of ingredients in my kitchen at any time. I kind of keep things a little bit simple. I don't mind doing planning and setup on the front end of the school year. I don't mind that at all. But on a day-to-day basis, I want to pretty much be able to pick up the plan, pick up the books, and just roll with it rather than doing a whole lot of prep and setup. So that's something I know about myself that can help me make good decisions on curriculum that I use. I also try to think about choosing curriculum that teaches the way I want my children to learn and teaches what specifically I want my children to learn. So for example, my children learning math in a way that was very strong conceptually was important to me. I didn't want them just memorizing facts or memorizing information about math without really understanding how it works. So I was on the lookout for a very strong concept-based math curriculum. I found math curriculums I really enjoy using, but that was a priority that led me towards a less traditional math curriculum, was choosing a math curriculum that was highly focused on the concept behind how numbers interact and work. Also, I appreciate explicit phonics instruction. I was not interested in more sight word based learning. I know that it is very effective with some children, but for many kids, they benefit a lot from phonics-based reading instruction. So I was looking for explicit phonics-based learning, and that's what led me to choosing All About Reading. To give a more specific example, for our science last year, I was really interested in doing an ocean-themed science because we live close to the ocean. My boys go to the beach frequently. They love all the creatures that they can find on the beach. They love the ocean and the sea. It's something that's very connected to their real world experience. So I wanted to get a program that would connect to that experience, and that led me to Gentle and Classical Nature Volume 2, which we had an absolute blast with. It was exactly the theme and the style that I was looking for. So those are just some real life examples of how I let my own personal quirks or preferences or priorities in the way that I teach my kids shape the way I look for curriculum. on the practical level, how I look for and find this curriculum is kind of the same thing you guys are doing now. I go and I seek out YouTube videos. YouTube videos are incredibly helpful to me as I try to assess whether a curriculum will be a good fit for my family. I might talk to other moms online who I know use a certain curriculum if I have more questions. And I want to tell you guys, always feel free to ask me questions. You can ask questions in the comments. You can even email me. I've had many people email me to ask curriculum and planning questions. I am always happy to answer to the greatest extent that I can. But truly, the internet and the ability to research, the ability to talk to other moms who use these resources is an incredibly huge benefit to us as we are planning and researching and trying to figure out what curriculums to use. So follow, like and follow your favorite homeschool moms on YouTube so that you can get the information that is helpful on these curriculums. And finally, once I've done the research and I've plugged in those curriculum names to the slots on my list, then I go ahead and I buy. And after that, I don't second guess and I don't look back. Now, part of this is due to the fact that I live overseas, don't really have a second chance in many ways. Once I've invested in a curriculum, that's what we pretty much have to roll with, especially with physical curriculum that can be very difficult to get here. You buy it, you roll with it. But also it's the knowledge that there's going to be no curriculum that doesn't need to be adjusted in some way. They're all going to need to be adjusted. You are going to have to learn how to live with your curriculum. Choose a good curriculum and then figure out how to live with it, how to thrive with it. Sometimes you're going to need to speed up the pace a little bit from what the curriculum says. Sometimes you're going to need to slow it down. Sometimes you're going to need to add in a little bit more of something that the curriculum doesn't have a lot of. Sometimes you're going to have to cut some things out of something that's a little bit boring, or it's just not really clicking with your family, or it's just not necessary. Every curriculum will need adjustments, so just be comfortable with that and don't necessarily think that just because there's an issue that you need to change what you're using. One final thought, I am also personally perfectly okay with using more than one curriculum or resource within the same category. So for math, for example, odds are we probably will be using 2 curriculums for any given year of math, because I've seen a lot of benefit in it. Curriculums can be so different in math and you can get benefits from different ones. We really enjoy Life of Fred. I wouldn't use it as a complete curriculum during the elementary years for sure. I think my children at least need a lot more practice and different ways to engage with math beyond Life of Fred, but it's a fantastic resource. I can use Life of Fred and I can use a whole different math curriculum for its benefits as well. That's my final thought I want to leave you with is don't feel that you necessarily have to be limited to just one singular curriculum to fulfill any one of these categories that you need. You can go ahead and blend in a few to get the best of both worlds. All right, I'll see you next time. Bye.